So what's it like renting or using rental equipment? Is that something that everybody can do, or is it something that's really restricted to people who do it for a living? We've done quite a bit of equipment work on our property already, and kind of like the firewood video, which if you haven't seen, check it out. We thought we would share with folks who watch our channel and who find this video what it's like running equipment, and kind of maybe answer a few questions about what it's like and who should be able to do it. If you're developing any kind of a property, whether it's off-grid or not, you're probably going to need to move some dirt and do heavy lifting and things, and that means you're going to need to run equipment. So we thought we maybe talk to you a little bit about some of the things we've done with equipment and kind of share the whole experience.
First off, how do you rent equipment? We're fortunate enough that our property is pretty close to town, and that's one of the reasons why we picked this property in the first place. We have a place in town that rents all sorts of heavy machinery, which is awesome. Typically, you can rent by the day, and sometimes you can get a really great deal on a weekend, which we've done before, but typically we go by the day. And something like a backhoe or an excavator runs about $250, $300 per day, and then if you rent it past that, they usually charge you by the hour, maybe about 30 or 40 bucks, and that does not include delivery, insurance, or fuel. So that's one of the reasons why we're happy to be close to town, because with something like a backhoe, we can actually drive it out to our property, which saves us maybe 100 bucks in delivery.
Yeah, and some of these pieces of equipment are actually highway legal, like the backhoe we're sitting on now. And because we're close to town, like Alyssa said, we actually can drive it from the equipment rental place here.
Not fast, mind you.
Yeah, like 25 miles an hour. But that's good, because the pickup and delivery for this particular piece of equipment, if we paid for that, would be about $180, which is like 2/3 the cost of a daily rental. So it gets expensive. The mini excavators or anything that's slow or not street legal, you're probably going to have delivered unless you are randomly watching this video and you happen to have massive trailers and trucks. So that's kind of a quick insight on renting equipment if you live near town, or if you can think about that when you're buying property. Try to stay close-ish to town, and then you can use equipment like this. So really quick on the hour or daily rental, a lot of equipment places rent pieces of equipment on the hour meter that's on that piece of equipment. Not all pieces of equipment have an hour meter, but on big pieces like this, usually when you pick it up, you're going to be given an hour meter reading, like say 500 hours. And they give you 8 hours for a day on the piece of equipment, but usually it's a 24-hour rental. So if you pick it up, say at 8 a.m., you need to have it back there by 8 a.m. the next day. But you're only allowed 8 hours on the meter for the piece of equipment. So a lot of times if we're not, actively using a piece of equipment, we'll just shut it off. Some of the newer pieces of equipment, actually, if you idle them down or throttle them down, the hour meter stops running. So it's kind of cool. So it kind of works in your favor, but that's usually how they factor the pricing on these pieces of equipment.
How do we get the most out of this rental? We typically make a long list of things we have to get done or would like to get done so that we can use all 8 hours. Sometimes we have to rent a backhoe for a small project like we just did for our driveway, and we didn't think that it was going to take us the full 8 hours, so we made a list of other things that we were able to work away at, and some of them we have left over for the next time that we rent. So that's a really good idea, and plan it like a week in advance, would you?
So what's it like running this equipment? It's kind of intimidating if you've never run equipment like this before. Alyssa can kind of attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, for such a big piece of equipment, the controls really are pretty simple. And if you maybe start small with a smaller piece of equipment, say like a small Kubota tractor, and you ask the rental place, they'll give you a quick walkthrough on the basic controls. And then if you were to, say, do a small project at your house, that would probably be the easiest way to get started with running the equipment. As you can tell, we're filming on a road, and people go fast. So the equipment is not really complicated, and Alyssa can attest to this too. At first, it feels like you have 2 left feet.
Like 10 left feet.
Like 10 left feet. Like nothing works. Most controls are a 2-handed type control system. And not all equipment actually runs the same. There's some that the controls are switched that'll really mess you up. Some pieces of equipment you can actually literally like flip a switch and it switches the controls, so that'll really mess you up. But basically they're very simple to operate. The only thing is they're pretty powerful, most of them. So you really have to learn to be more like fine-tuned, because they're designed to do really heavy tasks, and it's very easy to be too aggressive with them. But once you kind of get the hang of it and you start kind of getting the dexterity, it's really pretty straightforward. Alyssa was actually running the backhoe here yesterday, and at first it was pretty like 2 left feet.
Yeah,
But
well,
probably.
I've run, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah, I've run the excavator before and I know what all the controls do, but it's a matter of getting your brain and your hands to work together and really getting a feel for what to do when. So I'd say if you have maybe at least half an hour behind the wheel doing something that's not really gonna threaten your property, that's probably a good idea. So digging footings, that's a really good task for me, but leveling, that's a lot more fine-tuned, and that's something that I'll reserve for Jesse. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. So if you ever get the chance to drive a big piece of equipment, do it. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, and a really great way to learn to run this equipment kind of without all the risk is find a buddy or a friend maybe who's doing some work around their property, or even just a neighbor, and ask them if you can either just sit on the equipment with them, which there's usually room. Like we had a friends come over yesterday, and their kids got to ride around the backhoe, and they got to dump the bucket, and they were all fighting over who got to steer and all this stuff. So there's plenty of room, and I think once you get comfortable, your nerves will kind of settle down. But if you start with smaller pieces of equipment, it's a lot less intimidating than bigger pieces. So when you're first starting out, do projects that aren't super critical. This driveway project we just did requires a lot bigger machine, but the interesting thing is it's very precise work because too much disturbing of the soil and we have like avalanche issues, or landslide issues. So try to start with less critical projects like garden projects and things. I mean, most homeowners can run a tractor no problem. But if you have a kind of like an equipment need and you're not sure what equipment to rent, you can always just check with the equipment rental place and just tell them what you're trying to do, and they can kind of point you in the right direction. For leveling driveways, this backhoe, not the best. It's not the best because it's really driven on the level of the surface that you're driving on. So it's hard to make things nice and smooth. But the mini excavator that we rented previously when we did our driveway is perfect because it has a blade that can be adjusted in many different directions. And so you can make things just as smooth as you want. So it really is about picking the right equipment, and your equipment rental people are usually pretty helpful. If you have kind of an idea and you're not sure exactly which piece of equipment can do the job, just give them a call and ask.
The next question you're probably wondering about is it worth it to rent your own equipment, or is it better to just hire a professional that does this in their sleep? And so far, we think it's been worth it.
Yeah, there's never a perfect answer. You kind of have to weigh the costs out. Like our septic, when we had that put in, the company already had all of their equipment out here. And at first we were thinking, well, we'll just backfill it. It'll save us money, because we were thinking they'd have to come back and do it. But in the end, it was worth it for them to just keep doing the job and get it done because of the daily rental costs. I think they charged us for about 2 hours of their equipment time, which was less than half of the cost of renting a piece of equipment. So it's not always crystal clear. You kind of have to crunch the numbers. But I will say, like with this driveway project, leveling our driveway, putting that stuff in, digging our barn footings, working on the stairs for our hot tub deck,
digging footings for the garden fence.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of little projects like that, and if we would have hired a company, we would either run into a minimum cost on that because they're not going to send a guy out for an hour, or we'd be paying a tremendous amount of money for a crew to come out and do this work. So on a lot of these projects, we are probably saving hundreds, if not thousands of dollars by having this one skill. And like Alyssa mentioned earlier, we make kind of a laundry list of projects. So we're really maximizing every hour on these pieces of equipment. So is it a worthwhile skill to have? I would say absolutely. You never know when you might need to do a job. Like this driveway thing kind of came out of nowhere, and we already had a pretty big list, so it just kind of kicked us into renting a piece of equipment to get all these little jobs done. And it feels good because they were kind of stacking up deep.
Yep.
Like we had a bunch of stuff we want to get done, and now it's all done because we rented equipment. You might think that you want to own equipment. You might be tempted to run out and buy stuff, and it's always tempting because the payments always seem really low. But a lot of this equipment's very expensive, even if you buy used equipment, and you're looking at massive maintenance costs. For example, this backhoe we're sitting on has broken down on us twice. And the nice thing is that's not our problem. So that's on them. They've been very courteous and helped us work to get it running and make sure that we get the jobs done. So equipment ownership is not just expensive, but the upkeep actually takes a lot of time and energy too. So renting has a lot of bonuses that way. You can pick it up, take it back and maybe even leave it a little dirty. It's not their problem. So is renting equipment worth it? We would say yes. If you're thinking about developing any kind of a property yourself to try to maybe kind of learn or just go through the experience, or if you're wanting to go off grid like we are, and we want to develop this property from scratch, which is a phenomenal amount of work we're learning, this is definitely a skill you'll want to pick up as soon as possible if you don't already have it. Of course, a lot of people watching this video, you guys probably fly equipment to the moon and like you use it like as a submarine. And that's really cool because you guys are really amazing. You're like equipment fairies and stuff. But not everybody knows this stuff. It's amazing how many people don't really know how to run equipment. So if you have a chance, I would appeal to you, you equipment gods, take somebody under your wing and expose them. If you have a neighbor, maybe who has kids or something, expose them to the equipment at a young age. Even if they don't learn how to run it completely, just that lower intimidation factor will help them later in life. I really appreciate the people who did that for me when I was young. And I also want to give one shout out to my dad, who will never see this video because he doesn't use the internet. I just want to give him a shout out because as a kid he threw us on equipment and didn't let us get away with not running it. And it really helps me now in life. And I really appreciate that. Had I not had that skill, we wouldn't be sitting here making this video and we wouldn't be developing this property. And then one quick safety note, if you're new to running equipment, make sure you don't have people around you at first. Don't get cocky and don't be silly. Like a lot of the heavy lifting we've done with Alyssa, it's very precarious, and I want to say thank you to Alyssa because we have managed to so far avoid injury,
knock on wood,
which is amazing. So it just takes a lot of focus, and you have to really be confident in your skills in running equipment. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and it'll help you out if you guys decide to jump into an off-grid property, or maybe you're developing your own other property. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about our off-grid journey, please follow our blog, which is purelivingforlife.com. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get future videos. We're working on getting our garden put in. We've got a cistern coming. We've got a lot of projects ready for winter, so hopefully we'll get some exciting videos coming soon, and we'll see you in the next video.